All right, so today we're going to dive deep into something we all deal with every day, and that's food.
Food, glorious food.
Right. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the UK's National Health Service, the NHS, and their 8 tips for healthy eating.
Yeah?
And I'm actually pretty curious to see what they have to say, because sometimes healthy eating advice can be a bit, well, all over the place.
I know, right? It's like everyone's got a different opinion. But I think that's what's kind of cool about these NHS guidelines. They really focus on those like core principles that are pretty much universal. You know,
Yeah.
It's not about, following the latest fad diet or anything like that. It's more about understanding those basic building blocks of like a healthy and sustainable way of eating.
I like that. Getting back to the basics.
Yeah, exactly.
So tip number 1 jumps right in, and it's all about those calories.
Oh, yeah.
The NHS emphasizes finding that balance, right? Between the calories you're taking in and the energy you're burning through activity.
Makes sense.
Which, logically, it does, but I feel like this is where things can get a little bit tricky.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely not as simple as like, oh, just eat less and move more,
Right.
The NHS actually points out that calorie needs can be totally different from person to person,
Yeah.
depending on things like your age, your sex, and how active you are.
Really?
Yeah. They even suggest using like these online calculators that you can find
Oh, okay.
to get like a personalized estimate of how many calories you actually need.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So that kind of takes the guesswork out of it a little bit.
it does. It takes away some of that guesswork.
Okay, so we know those calories are important, but then what about the types of food that we're eating?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Tip number 2 tackles those often demonized starchy carbohydrates.
Carbs.
And get this, they actually recommend that starchy carbs should make up over 1/3 of our diet.
Wow. That's a lot more than some of those popular low-carb diets out there.
Yeah,
You know,
right. It's quite a bit more.
quite a bit more, yeah.
So what do they mean by that?
Well, it's not just about any old carb, right? You got to be a bit more discerning.
Yeah.
The NHS is really stressing the importance of choosing higher fiber or whole grain options.
Okay, so give me some examples. What are we talking about here?
So think about things like whole wheat pasta, brown rice, or even potatoes, but like with the skin on.
Ah, okay. So it's not about being afraid of all carbs. It's about choosing the right ones.
Exactly.
Why are those whole grain options better?
They're digested more slowly, so they help you feel full and satisfied for longer.
Gotcha.
Plus, they're packed with nutrients and fiber, which is great for your gut health.
So it's kind of like choosing fuel that burns slowly and steadily,
I like that analogy.
rather than giving you that quick burst and then you crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this actually leads perfectly into tip number 3, which is all about getting our 5 a day.
5 a day.
Of fruits and vegetables, that sounds like a lot, but I think they're saying even things like frozen or canned, dried or juiced options count.
You got it. They all count. And that's what makes it a little easier to manage, right?
Right.
Because you can get creative with it. You have smoothies, stir fries, throw some fruit on your cereal.
Okay.
There are tons of ways to sneak those portions in.
The portion size is still important, right? Like, I could eat a whole bag of grapes. Easy. What's a reasonable portion size?
Oh, for sure. You don't want to overdo it.
Right.
The NHS has like specific guidelines for that.
Okay.
So for fresh, canned, or frozen fruits and veggies, they recommend about 80 grams.
80 grams.
Yeah, think of it as like a handful or, a small cup.
Okay.
Dried fruit should be limited to about 30 grams.
Yeah.
It's a much smaller portion because it's more concentrated,
Right.
right? All that sugar. And then when it comes to juice, even though it counts towards your 5 a day, they say stick to just 150 milliliter glass a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like sugar is a bit of a recurring theme in these tips.
It does, doesn't it?
And speaking of which, tip number 4 is all about fish,
Ah, yes.
which is great news for me because I love seafood.
Seafood lover.
The NHS recommends at least 2 portions a week, with at least 1 being oily fish.
Bring on the salmon.
I'm with you.
Right.
I do have a confession, though. I love canned tuna. It's just so convenient.
Yeah.
But I've heard there's a downside when it comes to canned and smoked fish. Is that right?
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. They can be pretty high in salt. So while they're totally fine to enjoy every now and then, in moderation,
Gotcha.
it's important to make sure you're not going overboard on your overall salt intake.
Okay, so moderation is key. Now, I think this next tip is where things might get a bit more challenging for some people. Tip number 5 is all about those dietary villains. The ones we love to hate.
Uh-oh, I think I know where this is going.
Saturated fat and sugar.
The dynamic duo.
But The good news is the NHS isn't saying we have to banish them completely.
Thank goodness for that.
Right.
A world without those would be a sad world indeed.
So it seems to be all about making informed choices and finding a balance.
Finding that sweet spot, literally, when it comes to sugar. But yeah, it's about moderation, not deprivation.
Okay, so when it comes to saturated fat, what are some practical swaps that people can make?
Well, instead of reaching for, say, butter or fatty cuts of meat all the time,
Right.
you can opt for unsaturated fats, which are actually good for you. You find those in things like avocados, olive oil, nuts, and seeds.
So swapping that buttered toast for some avocado toast.
There you go. You're getting it.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. And when you are choosing meats, look for those lean cuts. Trim off any visible fat, before you cook it.
Right.
All of that helps to reduce your saturated fat intake. The science behind this is pretty solid. Excess saturated fat can raise your cholesterol levels, which increases your risk of heart disease.
So it's not about eliminating fat altogether.
No.
It's about being smart about the types of fat that we're consuming.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk sugar. I have a feeling this is going to be a bit of a wake-up call for me.
Well, get ready. The NHS is really focusing on what they call free sugars.
Free sugars.
So that's basically any sugars that are added to foods or found naturally in things like honey, syrups, and even fruit juices and smoothies.
Wait, so even unsweetened fruit juices?
Even unsweetened fruit juices, they still contain naturally occurring sugars.
Interesting.
So it's all about being a label detective. You really got to start scrutinizing those labels,
Oh, okay.
Look for products with a low sugar content. Ideally, less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams.
5 grams per 100 grams.
Okay.
And watch out for those sneaky names that sugar likes to hide under,
Oh, like what?
Like corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, dextrose.
Sneaky, sneaky sugar.
It's everywhere.
Wow. I'm realizing just how much sugar is snuck into those everyday products.
Right. It's eye-opening. And I guess cutting back on sugar isn't just about fitting into our genes.
No.
It's also about protecting ourselves from those serious health risks.
Exactly. Things like obesity and tooth decay.
Yeah, okay.
It's all connected.
So small changes can make a big difference.
They absolutely can.
Now, I love how the NHS doesn't just focus on our diet, but they also really emphasize the importance of an active lifestyle.
Yeah, getting those bodies moving.
Yeah, that's tip number 6.
Yes.
And it's not even just about weight management. It's about feeling good, sleeping better, and just boosting our mood.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And let's not forget about those serious health risks that are associated with, carrying excess weight.
Like what?
Things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and even some types of cancer.
Oh, wow.
It's serious stuff. And the NHS makes it very clear, if weight loss is a goal for you,
Yeah.
combining a healthy diet with regular physical activity is the key.
The magic formula?
It is. It's
Oh.
the magic formula. And you know what? They even have on their website a 12-week weight loss plan that's totally free.
That's amazing. Okay, confession time. I am terrible at staying hydrated.
Oh, tell me about it. I struggle with that too.
Tip number 7, which is all about drinking enough fluids, is one that I really, really need to work on. What are your thoughts on this?
It's funny. It's one of the simplest things we can do for our bodies, but so many of us struggle with it. And staying hydrated is crucial for so many reasons, it helps regulate body temperature, transport nutrients, flush out waste products. It's kind of a big deal.
So how much are we supposed to be drinking?
Well, the NHS recommends aiming for 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day.
Okay.
And that's in addition to the fluids that we get from food,
Oh, okay. So what counts? Does my morning coffee count towards that?
That's a good question. It does, actually.
Okay.
Good. So non-alcoholic drinks all count. But obviously, water, low-fat milk, and lower sugar options are going to be the best choices.
So my evening tea works too.
Yes. Your evening tea totally counts.
Okay, phew. I was worried there for a second.
But keep in mind that even unsweetened fruit juice and smoothies can pack a sugary punch.
Mhm.
So those, try to limit to 150 milliliters a day.
Got it. All right, so on to tip number 8. This is the breakfast debate.
Ah, the age-old question. To eat or not to eat?
I've definitely been guilty of skipping breakfast in the past, thinking it would help me lose weight.
Yeah.
But the NHS seems to disagree with that approach.
They do. Skipping breakfast doesn't necessarily lead to weight loss, and it can actually make you more likely to overeat later in the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Plus, you're missing out on all those essential nutrients that you need to kickstart your metabolism and fuel your brain.
So it's kind of like trying to run a car without any fuel.
Perfect analogy.
You're not going to get very far.
Exactly. A healthy breakfast that's high in fiber and low in fat, sugar, and salt. That's the way to go.
Okay.
That's the way to start your day.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here, and I feel like I'm already learning so much. I'm curious to dive even deeper into these tips and see how we can actually put them into practice.
Let's do it.
I've always heard that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
It really is.
But I never really understood, why.
Right.
But now, after hearing the NHS's perspective on it, it makes a lot more sense.
I think it's all about setting yourself up for success.
Yeah.
A balanced breakfast gives you that energy you need to focus to make better food choices throughout the day and avoid those mid-morning energy slumps.
It's like investing in your well-being right from the moment you wake up.
Exactly.
And the NHS even gives some examples, right?
Yes.
Like a classic combo of whole grain cereal with some semi-skimmed milk and fresh fruit.
Exactly. And you can do so many variations on that too.
Okay.
You could swap out the cereal for some whole grain toast with avocado, or add some nuts and seeds for extra protein and healthy fats.
Ooh, that sounds good. This is making me rethink my usual grab-and-go breakfast routine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be complicated, just thoughtful.
Exactly.
One thing that really struck me in that first part of our deep dive was how often we hear these conflicting messages about food.
Oh, yeah?
Are carbs really the enemy?
Yeah, it's confusing.
The NHS seems to think otherwise.
Right, and that's why I appreciate their approach.
Yeah.
They emphasize the importance of starchy carbs, but they also highlight the difference between complex carbs and simple carbs.
Okay, so break that down for me. What's the difference?
So simple carbs are made up of these short chains of sugar molecules.
Okay.
And you find them in processed foods, sugary drinks, white bread, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they get digested really quickly, which leads to those energy spikes and crashes.
Ah.
Whereas complex carbs, they have longer chains of sugar molecules.
Okay.
And they're found in things like whole grains, fruits, vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And they take longer to digest, so they give you more sustained energy and keep you feeling fuller for longer.
So it's not about avoiding all carbs.
Yeah.
It's about choosing the ones that actually fuel our bodies effectively.
Yeah, it's like choosing a long-lasting battery over one that quickly runs out of juice.
I like that analogy.
Right.
And that's where fiber comes in.
Fiber, yes.
So fiber is a type of complex carb that our bodies can't digest.
Right.
But it plays a crucial role in our digestive health, regulating blood sugar levels and helping us feel full.
It's a superstar nutrient.
So those high-fiber whole grain options that the NHS recommends are a double win.
They are.
They provide that sustained energy and keep our digestive systems happy.
Exactly.
It's funny how something as simple as switching from white bread to whole grain bread can make such a difference.
It really can. Small changes, big impact.
And speaking of small changes,
Yes.
I think it's worth revisiting those dietary villains we talked about earlier.
Right.
Saturated fat and sugar.
The dynamic duo.
These are areas where even slight adjustments can make a big difference in our overall health.
For sure.
Okay, give me the practical tips.
All right, so when it comes to saturated fat, one of the easiest swaps you can make is choosing lean cuts of meat and trimming off any visible fat.
Okay.
And cooking methods matter too. Grilling, baking, steaming. Those are all healthier alternatives to frying.
Those are great tips. What about those sneaky hidden sugars?
Oh, those sneaky sugars.
I'm definitely feeling more aware of them now.
It's amazing how much sugar is added to processed foods and drinks.
It is.
So a simple trick is to just start reading those labels more carefully.
Yeah, okay.
Look for products with a low sugar content. Ideally less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams.
5 grams per 100 grams.
Got it. And be mindful of those sneaky names for sugar.
Oh, yeah. What are some of those sneaky names?
Things like corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, dextrose.
Sneaky sugar.
It's hiding everywhere.
I'm becoming a label detective.
There you go.
It's like a whole new world is opening up to me.
It is. It's exciting.
And it's not just about avoiding those added sugars. It's also about choosing naturally sweet options, like whole fruits instead of fruit juices or smoothies.
Exactly. Whole fruits are packed with fiber, which helps to slow down the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream.
Okay.
Plus, they're full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all the good stuff.
This all makes perfect sense, but I have to admit, changing long-standing habits can feel overwhelming.
I know. It can be a lot.
Where do we even begin?
I think it's important to remember that healthy eating is not about perfection.
Right.
It's about progress.
Okay.
Start by focusing on 1 or 2 areas where you feel like you can make some realistic changes. Maybe it's swapping sugary drinks for water or adding an extra serving of vegetables to your dinner plate.
Small steps, Big impact.
Exactly.
I like that. And what about those times when we crave those less healthy options?
Oh, yeah. We all have those cravings.
Is there a way to, like, enjoy them without totally derailing our efforts?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Deprivation is not the answer. It's all about moderation.
Okay.
Allow yourself to enjoy those treats occasionally, but just be mindful of portion sizes and try to savor them slowly.
I appreciate that balanced approach. You know, it's about finding a sustainable way of eating that nourishes our bodies and brings us joy.
And that satisfies those taste buds.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I wanted to touch on something that I think is often overlooked.
Okay, what's that?
The importance of mindful eating.
Oh, that's a great point. Mindful eating is so important.
So what does that actually mean? What does it look like?
Well, it's all about paying attention to our food, savoring those flavors, listening to our body's cues of hunger and fullness.
So it's about like breaking free from those distractions,
Yeah.
like our phones or the TV, and really connecting with what we're eating.
Exactly. When we eat mindfully, we're more likely to make healthier choices and actually enjoy our meals more fully.
This is making me realize that healthy eating is not just about what we eat, it's about how we eat.
Yes.
It's about cultivating this like positive relationship with food and appreciating the nourishment it provides.
This whole mindset shift.
Now, we've talked a lot about the individual tips, but I'm curious to see how they all come together in a practical sense.
Right.
How do we actually translate these recommendations into a balanced and sustainable way of eating?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
It feels like we've been on this incredible food journey, you know?
It has been quite a journey.
Exploring all the ins and outs of healthy eating. We've broken down those 8 tips from the NHS.
Yeah,
But I think now comes the real challenge.
the real challenge,
Yeah.
putting it all into practice.
Right. I'm thinking about my own daily routine and how I can actually make these changes stick.
It's really about, finding what works for you and your lifestyle, what you like to eat. There's no like one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
But I think the NHS guidelines, they give you a really good framework for
Yeah.
building a healthier relationship with food.
Okay, so let's talk strategy. If someone's listening and they're like, all right, I'm ready, I want to do this, where do they even begin?
I would say start small.
Okay.
Pick 1 or 2 things that you can change.
Don't try to overhaul everything at once.
Exactly. Trying to change everything overnight is usually not going to work,
Right.
It's too much. Focus on a couple of areas where you feel like you could improve.
So, what are some easy wins that people could try right away?
I think one of the simplest things is to start swapping sugary drinks for healthier options.
Okay.
So instead of reaching for a soda or a juice,
Yeah.
go for water, unsweetened tea, or you could even do sparkling water
Oh, yeah.
with a squeeze of lemon or lime.
Okay.
That makes it a little more fun.
I like that. That's a good one. And it fits perfectly right with that NHS recommendation to limit those free sugars.
Exactly.
What about those of us who struggle with portion control? I know I've definitely been guilty of piling my plate way too high.
Oh yeah, me too.
What can we do about that?
Well, I think visual cues can be really helpful.
Okay.
The NHS actually suggests, when you're plating your food, aim to fill about 1/3 of your plate with starchy carbs, like potatoes, rice, pasta.
Okay.
Then the other 2/3 should be a mix of fruits, vegetables, and protein.
Okay. That's a really clear visual. It kind of takes the guesswork out of it.
Right. It makes it easy.
And speaking of visuals, I'm wondering about grocery shopping.
Oh, yeah. The supermarket can be a dangerous place.
It's a minefield of temptations.
so many temptations.
Right. How do we navigate those aisles with all this new wisdom that we have?
Well, I think planning ahead is key.
Okay.
Plan your meals for the week.
All right.
Make a shopping list. And that way, you're less likely to buy things that you don't need. And then, when you were at the store, stick to the perimeter.
Oh, the perimeter.
That's usually where you'll find the fresh produce, the lean proteins, and the whole grains.
It's like creating a little healthy eating treasure map.
Exactly.
And when we are choosing those carbs, we now know to look for those high fiber whole grain options.
Yep.
Like our whole wheat bread and brown rice.
Exactly. And you know what?
What?
Don't be afraid to try new things.
Oh, yeah.
Variety is key, right?
Okay.
So try a new fruit or veggie each week, or explore different types of beans and lentils and grains.
This is making me excited to get in the kitchen.
Right. It's fun.
But let's be real. Life is busy. Sometimes you just don't have time to cook a meal from scratch.
No, I totally get it. I'm the same way.
So what about those days?
I think it's good to have some healthy convenience options on hand.
Okay, so what?
Canned beans, Frozen vegetables, pre-portioned nuts and seeds.
Yeah.
Those are all great things to have when you're short on time.
And remember, we talked about the importance of mindful eating.
Yeah.
Even if you're having a quick meal,
Yes.
Just pause for a second, savor those flavors,
Yes.
and appreciate what you're putting in your body.
Exactly.
Wow. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from feeling like totally overwhelmed by all the conflicting information out there
Right.
to now having this clear, framework for a healthier lifestyle.
That's the goal.
And it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress, right?
Progress, not perfection.
I love that. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into healthy eating, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I like it.
What's one small, achievable change that you can make this week?
This week.
Inspired by these 8 tips from the NHS, to nourish your body and mind.
Think about that. What's one small change? It doesn't have to be huge.
Even those small steps can lead to big results over time.
They can. You'd be surprised.
It's all about making those choices that align with your values and support your well-being.
Exactly. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.
And most importantly, stay hungry for a healthier, happier you.